So we're talking about challenges. We're starting with the challenge of having people in. So welcome to all of you as we now invite the regulator's perspective. And I would like to request first the Honorable Chair of the session, Shri Anil K. Ganeriwala, for his opening remarks, and then we take the further proceedings of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It is an honor and a real joy to be in India and to chair the session for you, to give you a glimpse of the European perspective in the European Union and Europe. I hope that everything will be fine with connections. First of all, I want to thank my fellow chair, Dr. Ganeriwala, to chair this session and to be host. We have something in common because we almost have the same first name. My name is Emil and my neighbor has the name Anil, which is almost the same. So we have already a lot of common between Europe and India. Why the view from the European Union? I liked the expression that India is the second home of homeopathy, and I think truly India is the second home of homeopathy. But let's make a start with the country where Samuel Hahnemann was born and developed his homeopathy, and secondly the country in Europe, France, where he brought homeopathy to full wisdom and died actually, and he is buried in Paris. As a first speaker, I want to introduce Professor Werner Kneus from the German Federal Institute of Medicines and Medical Devices. He is head of the division for special therapies, complementary therapies. Maybe you think that the European people, regulators and industry people are meeting here in India and they don't see each other so much. But I can assure you that my colleagues, the speakers of this session, and also hopefully the people from the European Pharmacopoeia and from the Swiss authority regularly discuss matters related to homeopathic medicines. So I want to ask Professor Kneus to take the floor and share with us the experience, the long experience Germany has in regulating homeopathic medicines. Please, Professor Kneus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Joint Secretary, Emil, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends. It's a great honor to be here, and I have to state just 3 months ago I was standing here at the same podium, and as the Joint Secretary already mentioned, we had a symposium which was a meeting amongst regulators in the field of herbal medicines. And in this way, you see, I'm back here, and so I'm also standing for the globalization. But I also would like really to express my deep thanks to the Indian hosts for pushing forward these kinds of meetings. And I consider this is necessary to have platforms for discussion and exchange, and also to develop common visions for the future. I will give you a short introduction into the regulatory framework for homeopathic medicines in Germany, and especially just focusing on the status quo, some challenges and opportunities. As my friend Emil van Gaalen pointed out, Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy, was living a part of his life in Germany, but then later moved towards France. And consequently, you see here a stamp which was celebrating 200 years of homeopathy in Germany. We are part of this traditional therapeutic system. When the German Medicinal Products Act was established in 1976, there was already a clear statement by the German Parliament which was intending to have scientific pluralism in medical therapy, and also stated that complementary therapies like phytotherapy, homeopathy, and anthroposophy should be within the regulation of medicinal products. The status today in Germany, there is a broad acceptance of homeopathy and also anthroposophy by the population. There is a substantial market in Germany and in the European Union. We have a lot of small and medium-sized companies working in this field, and we have a lot of expertise to deal with the assessment of homeopathic medicines at the BfArM, the federal authority in Germany. The regulatory approach in Germany is summarized on this slide. The basic idea is to integrate homeopathic and anthroposophic medicines in the regulatory framework for medicines. This is a high objective, and also it takes its price and needs a lot of professionality. In this framework, medicines must be evaluated before the access to the market, and so we also brought together specific expertise at the BfArM. Nevertheless, the law allows us to particularly consider some characteristics when we are assessing quality, safety, and efficacy of homeopathic medicinal products. Being regulators, of course, we want to safeguard public health. We want to protect patients from risks from fraudulent products, fraudulent claims, and fraudulent information. We established a close interaction with expert committees, the Commission C for anthroposophic medicinal products and Commission D for homeopathic medicinal products, which is directed to Madame Renou. In these commissions, we also have physicians and practitioners which give recommendations to BfArM. And also it's my pleasure that Dr. Thomas Breitkreuz, who is the chair of Commission C, is here with us in this auditorium. Some basic figures on homeopathic medicinal products in Germany, which are full and complete under the regulation. We have more than 1,200 licensed homeopathic medicinal products, more than 1,000 licensed anthroposophic medicinal products, and nearly 4,000 registered products. So at least we must state that there is an availability which is basically given by the registration or marketing authorization of these products. I told you that there is an expertise concentrated for assessment in the federal institution. There is one division with about 55 people dedicated to complementary and traditional medicinal products. And you can see just one unit with nearly 20 persons. Unit 43 is dedicated to the assessment of homeopathic and anthroposophic medicinal products. I very much like the interdisciplinary approach we have with scientists from the field of pharmacy, medicine, food chemists, biologists, in order to fulfill our tasks. The regulatory framework, not only in Germany but within the European Union, is rather complex. I just can give you a flavor, and you see, of course, we have a German Medicines Act. We are embedded in the European legislation. There are different expert committees and also conventions like the Common Technical Document, which have to be regarded when applying for an approval of a registration or marketing authorization for a homeopathic medicinal product. But what's just happening, in summary, we have an application followed by an assessment and finally a decision that is made by the authority. We have in the German Medicines Act and the same in the European Directive a special definition of homeopathic medicinal products, and it states that this must be a product prepared in accordance with the homeopathic manufacturing procedure described in the European Pharmacopoeia or in the absence therefore in the pharmacopoeias used officially in the EU member state. So we have a very wide approach of pharmacopoeia, but this is linked to the basic definition of homeopathic medicinal products. If you want to go to the market, we have in Germany 2 options at the national level. You could apply for registration. This is without any indication of a claim. And there is a mandatory labeling, homeopathic medicinal product without approved therapeutic indication. Consult a doctor if symptoms persist during the use of the medicinal product. The second alternative and option is a marketing authorization with an indication claim. And within this building of an indication, we are allowed, instead of results of pharmacological and toxicological tests or clinical trials, to use other scientific documents, which maybe also include medical expertise. Looking at the European scale, the European Directive allows basically one pathway, and this is the registration. There is an option for a kind of marketing authorization, but this is left to the member states. So we have the option for European procedures, just taking a workload and work sharing on board by a couple of European Union member states with a so-called mutual recognition procedure or a decentralized procedure. In order to facilitate these procedures and to follow the principle of safety for the citizens of the European Union, this simplified registration procedure is without any indication claim. The substances should be generally known in homeopathy, the so-called homeopathic use. They are only for oral or external use, and there must be a sufficient degree of dilution to guarantee the safety, which is D4 or C2 respectively. I already told you the mandatory labeling, and we have the manufacturing according to a procedure described in a pharmacopoeia as already mentioned. This is just to give you an idea that there is this so-called common technical document, an application form, which is basically used for all medicines, but which is also with some problems applicable to the homeopathic medicinal products, and where it's laid down which kind of materials have to be provided for an application. Concerning the homeopathic use in Germany, we are collaborating with the Commission D, and there must be a substance described by Materia Medica references. The monographs of the Commission D could also fulfill this purpose, and there may be publication of homeopathic drug provings in the literature or publication of clinical cases in scientific literature which could be taken into account. Having a look to Europe, I will later come back to this HMPWG. There are also some papers with relevance for this homeopathic use where we try to harmonize the evaluation and assessment at the European Union level. Concerning safety, this is a very wide complex, and for safety issues, there may be issues arising from the homeopathic use. Do we have any case reports from pharmacovigilance? Is there any knowledge about maybe some toxicological problems? The degree of dilution, the posology, and the package size are of importance, as well as the validity of the data. So our strategy concerning safety is that, of course, common regulatory standards for safety evaluation must be applied without any compromise, but we can consider particulars of homeopathy. We must see that sometimes there is a lack of data and we do not have always the same data available as for other medicines. It's a regulatory responsibility, of course, and this is why we, for example, also published a scientific paper about our concept of evaluation. At the level of this homeopathic medicinal products working group, which was established by all the heads of medicines agencies of the European Union medicines agencies, we had also some documents which had been harmonized the divergent views and perspectives from the different member states. And just here you can see there are some documents, points to consider on non-clinical safety or first safe dilutions, or points to consider on safety of homeopathic medicinal products from biological origin. These can be found on the website of the HMA, and I'm just always swapping in between this German and European perspective to show you that Germany is of course not isolated within the European Union, but we are embedded in this framework where we also strive for a harmonized approach within the European Union. Quality, also very important for homeopathic medicinal products, because the quality is defined by the process. Without defining the process, you cannot fulfill the requirements of a reproducible quality. So the definition is, on one hand, given by the homeopathic manufacturing procedure linked to the pharmacopoeias, and specifications which have to be applied in the dossier. And you see from the raw material to the herbal drug and the homeopathic preparation, you come finally to a finished product. Also, there is a link to the quality requirements of the European Pharmacopoeia, but as we have later a talk by a colleague from the European Pharmacopoeia, I will not go here into detail. You just see there is, on one hand, the assortment of general monographs, but also on a specific monographs which are addressing just some specific raw materials and starting materials. We have also homeopathic preparations, a very important general monograph in the Pharmacopoeia, where it's laid down they are prepared from substances, products, or preparation called stocks in accordance with the homeopathic manufacturing procedure. And even if you take the name stock, and I think this is also important for the global dialogue, within this homeopathic working group, we established a kind of glossary between the member states of the European Union. And it was really interesting that we were all talking together in English, making translations from our mother language to English, and then find that we have for homeopathic provings even 3 or 4 different translations. And so if we want to get in a global dialogue, we really must be aware that we have to try to speak the same and a similar language, especially in this field of homeopathy. Efficacy may be one of the most sensitive points with regard to homeopathy, and there we have a distinct strategy also by BfArM. As pointed out, with respect to the indication, we have a system which is accepting other scientific knowledge, so we are not bound to clinical trials in just the standard way of randomized clinical trials. We have established a set of monographs which cover possible indications for some herbal homeopathic raw materials by Commission D, where we just have also integrated the medical experience in this field. Also, there were criteria for the evaluation of the efficacy by Commission D, which are depending on the severity of the indication. The higher the indication, the more material must be presented. And the indication is definitely phrased in a way to indicate the link to the context of the use of homeopathic therapy, so that you cannot disconnect an indication from homeopathy. In this way, this is rather challenging to evaluate efficacy of homeopathic medicinal products, and I think this is also a challenge to the future to discuss the best ways how to deal with these indications in homeopathy. But taking this into account, regulatory decision must be balanced. We must offer options, safeguarding availability of these kind of products, but we should also clearly emphasize limitations if applicable. The European network, which I mentioned, is just creating a platform where we try to integrate the expertise and knowledge of all the European regulatory agencies, just establishing a forum on the one hand to guide about assessment for national authorities, to guide industry for applicants, and also to give scientific issues and a lot of guidance which is published then later on. So I will not go into detail, but once again, this is an intrinsic part, not being alone with homeopathy in Germany, but it's a clearly European situation. To summarize, the legislation and regulatory framework considers specific therapeutic approach of homeopathy. Homeopathic medicinal products require quality control and safety measures to protect public health. The assessment of homeopathic medicinal products must be based on specific expertise, and options and limitations must be evaluated on a sound scientific and regulatory basis. In this way, I think to bring together scientific and regulatory perspectives, we need some fora like this. I especially like the word integrative medicine, because this is indicating that there is one medicine and we have to see how to integrate all the different forms of medicines. And with respect to these evaluations, the future vision, maybe of course that we learn from each other, understand also maybe different approaches worldwide, and come then to a more convergence of regulatory measurements, and maybe also in a visionary future to some mutual understanding and mutual recognition of respective regulations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Kneus, for this experience in a nutshell coming from Germany. I can imagine that you are not immediately aware of all the regulations and items mentioned in this presentation, but from the European regulatory perspective, my colleagues, Professor Kneus and also Dr. Kozelek from Croatia, are present here to explain and to answer further questions you may have in the upcoming days. Secondly, I want to ask Dr. Anne Ley from the French Medicines Agency to give the French regulatory perspective. Germany and France are the two biggest countries in the European Union, and they have both a very strong homeopathic tradition and a strong homeopathic industry. Dr. Ley has a unique experience because she worked at the European Pharmacopoeia office in Strasbourg, and later on she joined the French Medicines Agency in Paris, the ANSEM, where she is head of the Department for the Assessment of Homeopathic and Herbal Medicines. If we have the video link, I think it's an excellent idea. I will try to introduce, as I mentioned, France, Germany, but we also have Switzerland. Switzerland is part of Europe, but to make it a little bit difficult, it is not a member of the European Union. Switzerland has unique features also in the regulation of homeopathic and complementary medicines. And to illustrate that we are in a constant dialogue since recently with our colleagues from the Swiss Medic Agency, a couple of months ago in November, all the European regulators were hosted at a meeting in Bern, and we had an extensive discussion with Dr. Martin Ziak. We can see you now on the screen, Dr. Ziak. Welcome in Delhi. Maybe it is a little bit earlier or later, I don't know, but we are very happy to see you. I hope that we can hear you, and I want to invite you to give the Swiss perspective on the regulation of homeopathic medicines. Please take the floor.
Thank you for your introduction. It's indeed 8 o'clock in the morning in Switzerland. And the regulation of complementary and medicinal products in Switzerland. At the moment, I'm in Bern, the capital of Switzerland, and I'm at Swissmedic. On the right-hand side, you see the main building of Swissmedic. In the next In the next 25 minutes, I'm going to present you about the following topics. Can you see the agenda on your screen? I will present you or give information about Swissmedic, then about the legal basis for marketing authorization of medicinal products in general. Then the next topic will be the regulation of complementary medicinal products and future challenges and opportunities. Let me start with the first topic, with Swissmedic. Switzerland has its own agency for a therapeutics product. And as you know, Switzerland is really in the middle of Europe. It's the heart of Europe, but does not belong to the European community. Swissmedic fulfills a lot of tasks. A few of them are listed on your right-hand side. It's on one hand the marketing authorization, it's the market surveillance of medicinal products and devices, the laboratory controls, law enforcement, laws and standards, and information of the Swiss peoples on therapeutic products and control of narcotics. Swissmedic has 360 FTE, full-time equivalent, and this number is limited by the government. Actually, we have about 424 employees. 55% work full-time, 46% part-time. We have 56% women and 44% men. The language spoken at Swissmedic is German, 85%, French, 12%, and Italian, 3%. The distribution of the employees among the sectors are authorization, about 1/3, licenses, 26%, marketing surveillance, 16%, and legal office, 6%, and others are 17%. The qualification of our employees are mostly medicine, pharmacy, sciences, and so on. The organization of Swissmedic is as follows. We have a director, Mr. Schmetzer, and on top of the director, this agency council. Then 7 sectors. We have 3 supporting sectors, like communication and networking, human resources and finances, and infrastructure. And then we have authorization, market surveillance, licensing, and legal affairs. And the division of herbal and complementary medicine products belong to the sector of authorization. Switzerland has its own for marketing authorization. We have the law of therapeutic products, HMG, which is dated from the year 2000. At the moment, this law is revised. That's the last topic of my presentation. Then in addition, we have other federal regulations and of the As a specialty of Switzerland, the complementary medicine is established at constitutional level. You can see here the law, the paragraph 118a. Of course, it's written in German or French, but I try to translate it to English. It says that the government has to undertake efforts to support complementary medicines. The general basis for marketing authorization, but I think general for every country, we need a full analytical, chemical, and pharmaceutical documentation, a pharmacological and toxicological documentation, and a clinical documentation. This must be at the latest development of science and engineering, just state of the art. But it's also given in the law in Switzerland that this is a simplified marketing authorization procedure for herbal medicine products, for homeopathic and anthroposophic, vampiric medicinal products with and without indication. And the same is also for Asian medicinal products with and without indication. What you can see here is the annual report of Swissmedic from 2015.